Hey, 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 happy healing and becoming. Thank you guys so much for joining us for yet another episode of Healing and Becoming, where you guys already know what it is. We believe in lifting as we climb, turning our trials into treasures, living a life to inspire and not impress, opening up and allowing God to fully restore us, and loving as if we've never been hurt. I have a question for you guys. Have you ever watched one of those movies where, like Groundhog Day, or one of those movies where it seems like the same thing keeps happening over and over and over? Recently, me and one of my daughters, we watched this movie, and I can't even remember the name of it, but basically it was like a kind of a horror movie that was really cheesy. And in the movie, the people kept dying over and over and over because they couldn't figure out like the puzzle, or like what the crazy person was trying to get them out of. Sometimes that is what our life is like. I literally was talking to a client earlier today, and she said it's a different guy, but it feels like it's the same thing. And I said that's because you're in a cyclical cycle of dysfunction, and until you interrupt the pattern and feel like and find out what is the root that's causing you to attract these same people and have these Groundhog Days experiences, it'll be a different guy in a different body on a different day. That's what a lot of us go through. And I believe it starts with our attachment style, things that happened way in childhood before we even had cognition of what was going on. I think today's guest is going to rock your world with some information to really help us disrupt these patterns of this cyclical dysfunction and really start living the life that we desire, the life we pray about, the life we dream about, the life we scroll watching other people live. So, without any further ado, hey sis, you have a minute?
Hey sis, you got a minute? Hey sis, you got a minute? Hey sis, you got a minute? Hey sis, you got a minute?
Yeah, I'm so happy to be here.
Hey, Jessica, I am super excited to have you on as well. Everything that you talk about is like my love language. I love talking about this stuff. So, can you tell the TWT family a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. Welcome, everyone who's listening. I am a psychotherapist. I study interpersonal neurobiology and attachment theory. I have a best selling book, Anxiously Attached: Becoming More Secure in Life and Love, that came out 3 years ago. I have a new book, Safe: How to Build More Secure Relationships, coming out in October. So I'm just excited to help people understand attachment theory, understand trauma bonding, understanding how to break familiar patterns. And this is what I help my clients with every day. And these are what my books help people kind of break free from.
I love that. I love that. We're going to definitely get into more about your book and just really the one that is the bestseller, as well as your new one that's coming out. That's word safe has been resonating oh my goodness. I was speaking at a conference this weekend, and that term came up like 3 or 4 times. And actually, when I was doing the work with my client earlier today, I was telling, because she was like, it feels like home. And I said, what you're really looking for is safety. That's what most women and men, but I can only speak from a woman's lens of life. We're looking for safety. Why do you think safety is interrupted, and how do we get back to that place of feeling safe?
It's funny that you say it feels like home. I talk about it in the book as actually we will unconsciously and through implicit information attract people who ironically are familiar and
Mm.
can bring up similar patterns that happened in our home. So we think and are gravitated towards a type, and actually it can recreate very painful dynamics. And I believe so we can get conscious and heal. So often what we think is safe is really familiar, and we need to
Mhm.
kind of rethink all of that, because safety can feel boring or very intimate or just different to our nervous system. So I actually use like I talk about my one of my relationships is like he felt like home for me,
Mhm.
and then he brought me like home to a lot of my earlier trauma, and I did heal from it. But ironically, that sense of home can blow up on us because we can be attracted to more or less what is familiar, and what our trauma body kind of like lingers towards.
Oh, Jessica, that is so good. My current marriage, I remember those words that you said. I was like, "Oh my God, this is boring." Like he's so nice. He's so good to me, you know? And so I would create scenarios and I would self-sabotage until I did, and here I am, a inner healing coach, and I do all the healing stuff. But for me, it felt so safe that I was like, I something must be wrong. There must be. And so how does a woman, a man, a person that is dealing with seeking familiarity because that's what we're used to, how do we begin to break those patterns? Because I am so glad that I did, and I would love for you to share some techniques that we can do to begin to break those patterns.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a lot of what safe is about. But I think that we all have core wounds and they
Mhm,
live in our body. And I talk about attachment wounds, and they're usually attached to like, I'm gonna be left, or I'm unlovable, or I'm, these kind of mantras that we have that come actually from internalizing things when we're really little. And then we'll find a person, and ironically, will somehow manifest the exact thing that our core wound feels. And I know so many people, mine was, I'm always going to be left. And
mm,
I always, that fear manifested, and I picked people whose trauma was activated, they would flee.
mm,
So, understanding where your core wound is, where it lives in your body, when it started, meeting that part of you differently and giving it what it needed then, now, rather than trying to seek to resolve it within another human being.
mm, mm. Understanding your core wound.
Yeah.
How do these wounds even come about? Like, I know that there's the big T traumas and there's the little T traumas. And so often people think it has to be this big thing that happens that creates these core wounds. Do you believe that? And what are some ways that maybe, if you're comfortable sharing, that your wounds were created in childhood?
Yeah, I mean, I think so many people think, I had no trauma. And really, when we start to look at attachment trauma, we can have the best intended parents. If they weren't attuned and emotionally present because they were
Mhm,
stressed out or your mother's nervous system was anxious, we're wiring to them constantly as an infant. So, from like womb to four, depending on how emotionally available and present and attuned our primary caregiver is what we internalize as safe. I'm going
mm,
to get my needs met or not safe. And right, there's varying degrees. So you can just, like, my mom was just anxious and overworked and like focused on survival. She wasn't a bad mom, but
mm,
my nervous system wired a little bit more anxiously. An avoidant person's parent might have been focused more on tasks and not emotionally connecting to the child. So
mm,
they're not what you think of as trauma. It's all built around connection, the
mm,
quality of connection, and what your nervous system learns to expect. If connection is safe, is it safe in the world? And all of this stuff is kind of hardwired into us when we're so tiny. So,
mhm,
yeah, if you're listening, it's usually never these big events. It's accumulation of a lot of small events. It could be a father that overworked and didn't give you a lot of attention. All of these things kind of play into our nervous system, teach us what to expect, teach us how to adapt to stay in connection, and we bring all those adaptations, which are our attachment styles, into our romantic relationships. And
mm.
usually, we internalize messages around certain behaviors when we're small too.
Mhm. And now, do these only come from, like, our primary caretakers, or does it also happen in, like, our teachers or other people that we look at as our the big adults in our lives?
Yeah, so early attachment wounds come from early attachment figures, but every important relationship leaves a mark. So a teacher can for sure leave a mark, a very critical teacher. I know my mentor had a very loving teacher who ended up being a secure attachment for her. Our primary ones when we're really little, because we're like these little sensing beings and we're sensing the connection and the quality of the connection, they really imprint on us. And then every single relationship then on does. And absolutely, I talk about school teachers because they play such an important role 9 months out of the year, we look up to them. They're like our mini gods, right? And so they really
Mhm.
heavily influence us, and certain relationships and best friends, all of these things influence us. So
Mm.
yes, yeah, and I talk about all of that. So any important relationship can leave its mark, positive or negative.
Mhm. I want to go a step backwards because I feel like, we're talking about it and this is common language to us, the attachment styles, but maybe the listener is like, what are they talking about? Secure attachment, anxious, like what is all of that stuff? Can you go over the attachment styles, what they are, and then just kind of how they present themselves in our lives?
Yeah, sure. So I'll just say securely attached people, they're not perfect people. They don't have issues. I mean, they still have issues, but when they get dysregulated or upset, they tend to re-regulate a little bit better. They tend to have a little bit more trust in the world. They tend to be great with being close and also with space. So they
Mm,
don't have a fear of being engulfed, and they don't have a fear of abandonment. So they're pretty secure. Not It's not perfect, but they're more flexible. And then you have anxious and avoidant. So I wrote the book Anxiously Attached, and those are people who have a conscious fear of abandonment, and their primary caregiver basically was sometimes available and sometimes not energetically.
mhm,
So you're always waiting for the shoe to drop. They tend to have the quote unquote more codependent traits. They can sense what other people's needs are. They tend to be people pleasers. They overgive. They self abandon. And if we want to get really deep,
mm,
in order to stay connected to their primary caregiver, they would sense what their primary caregiver was going through. So they would leave their body and actually track their primary caregiver. So,
mm,
I mean, and so these individuals can be very empathic, all of that. Then on the other end of the spectrum is avoidant. Avoidant or true avoidant typically gives up on getting their needs met because their parent was detached emotionally. They might have taken care of them, but they didn't connect emotionally. So, like, why reach out? These individuals tend to grow up to be very independent, usually very successful driven, but they lack some emotional like ability to really connect emotionally. And
mhm.
what's interesting, and I talk about this in both books, but anxious and avoidant attract each other, and
I was just gonna ask that.
they play
Mhm,
out the anxious avoidant dance. The anxious person is full of life and expression, and they see the avoidant who's stoic and seems independent and calm, and they're attracted to that, and the avoidant person's attracted to the liveliness of the anxious person, and it's like a moth to a flame, right? And the problem is when an anxious person gets scared, they need to get closer. And when an
mhm,
avoidant person gets scared, they need space. So we now have
mhm,
two people who need the opposite thing at the same time. So that's what's called the anxious avoidant dance. And so many people are probably listening and saying, I can relate to that. That's a
mhm,
very common dynamic. And then there's a fourth category that I talk about a lot in Safe, and it's disorganized. And it's a baby who was scared of their primary caregiver, but also needed it. So it can someone who was abused or someone who was just stuck in fear and needed connection at the same time. So in
mhm,
adulthood, I mean, we can have pockets. I have pockets of disorganization, but it can look like I really want to connect with you, but I'm also scared at the same time. So I'm stuck in fear, and I struggle being close, but I struggle being alone. So I feel disorganized. And so
mm,
it's the core of that is terror. Where like anxious is anxiety, unpredictability, avoidance is more shut down. I would say the core, well, and avoidance can sometimes be other, like feeling like you're in a void. But I'd say the core of disorganized is a feeling of terror. Like I have no safe place to orient to and land. And we're not one style. I know I wrote the book
mm,
Anxiously Attached. I have healed a lot from that, but we have different embedded patterns embedded inside of us. Depending on who we're attaching and their patterns, different patterns can come up. So I can show up more anxious with someone who's avoidant. I could show up a little anxious with someone who's more anxious than me. And the work is to work towards security, to build a
mm,
bigger baseline, to have more secure relationships. And so understanding all the patterns and how they show up really starts people down the healing path, and gives
mhm,
them some answers to why these
mhm.
patterns and dynamics keep playing out.
Mhm, that's really good. I'm not sure if you've read the book or if you heard about the book. I'm sure you have the Ancient Generation, the Ancient
Yeah, yeah, I think
Generation, and
I don't
so
think it was just the anxious generation. I don't
Asian
think it was.
generation,
Yeah.
yes, and so it talks a lot about just where we're at as a country, as a world, right? And some of the things that because unfortunately, a lot of people are not being parent by their caretakers or by their parents. It's now social media or TikTok, they get all of this information. And so I can just imagine 10 years from now, 20 years from now, these conversations that we're having now may be flipped because it will be more about how technology has groomed us, but even as, adults and women of, with our life experience, I'm so grateful that social media wasn't around when I was a kid because I don't know how I, how I would have been able because I already had enough trauma to fill my bucket. But how do you think or do you think social media plays a part with these different attachment styles where you're already anxious because you have this parent at a very young age that wasn't present, and now, you may be an emerging business owner, or you may be, you know, deciding to get into a relationship, and you post a picture and your boo doesn't like it, or the people don't respond to it. How does that widen those wounds?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I actually like we're moving more in the direction of more avoidant attachment
Mm,
style. So our culture, and I talk about this a lot in Safe, promotes self-regulation, achievement, individualization when we're biologically wired to be in connection and community and to have more interaction than we currently even are having.
mm,
So we're moving more. So we reward avoidant behavior because avoidant behavior usually is very successful and task driven,
mm,
but it leaves you very disconnected. So, and I've worked with many people like who are more on the avoidant scale and they're lonely. They're really,
mm.
really lonely. And I can talk about the hemispheres because the avoidant people
Ooh.
live more in the left hemisphere and more of our relational connecting lives in our right hemisphere. So we're
We're talking
moving.
brain talk now, right?
Yeah, yeah, right, right.
Mhm,
So in our right hemisphere is where we relate and connect deeply. It's also where we store our trauma and it's where we connect more to our body. So
mm,
our culture is moving more to the left. Let's stay busy, let's be task oriented, we're scary how much we're moving into the left. So a lot of the healing is moving into our body and shifting back into the right hemisphere. And so as AI, I mean, AI is tricky because it validates people, which I think a lot of people love because they don't get that validation.
mhm.
Um, but it's not real human to human connection. But it might actually be more connection than some people are currently getting, which is
Wow.
really terrible.
Sad.
It's when you really understand that it is we live in a very lonely place. And if you're listening and you're like, I'm lonely, we're not meant to be lonely. And healing is not something you do alone. Like we need
Mm-mm.
each other. We need to learn how to depend on dependable people. That's how you build inner security. Is by
Mm,
depending on the right people and doing that kind of work. It's not by becoming more independent. So
mm.
those messages from a neurobiological lens really hurt us in terms of the information that we need to understand how to heal and thrive and grow and expand and feel alive in the world is the opposite of the direction that technology is unfortunately taking us in.
100%. So often I have clients because I do both individual and group work. And my goal is to always push my clients into the group. And they're like, oh, but I don't want people to know my stuff. And I said, we heal best in communities. It is amazing, like what happens in the group setting. Amazing work happens individually too, but in the group setting, it's like, oh my gosh, I'm like sitting there as the facilitator, just loving it. And
Mhm.
so those words that you just said, like, and I'm one that's like, oh, we don't need validation, but it validates the work that I'm doing because it really helps me to see like pushing the women into community is very healing. And I think in particular, again, I can't speak for a man, but for women, like historically, like healing communities. I mean, there is so much information about how women, when we were on our menstrual cycle or when we were childbirth, all of these things, we were together and we healed together. Do you have any research or have you done any research on just the power of healing in a community?
Yeah, I mean, well, two things. I would say men need it even more than women.
Mm,
And they really struggle with healing in general because vulnerability is not as easy as them, and they need it just as much as women. And women are more, it's more okay, and obviously it's been okay, like you said, since we were like back in the caveman days. So,
mhm,
and healing happens in healing relationships and in safety. And I talk about that from a nervous system perspective. So when
mhm,
we are in our nervous system is sensing safety with another. It's called a
mm,
ventral state of connection. It's called co-regulation. We have more access to our own implicit memory and our neural nets will open. In safe environments and safe relationships, that's where you do your most profound work. If you don't
mm,
have safety, you're really stuck in survival mode.
mm,
So a lot of therapy or a lot of coaching, which I do, it might is helping a client start to feel safe for the first time and really being
mhm,
present with them and attuning and your own inherent like wisdom and if the clinician is good enough to work with the body and implicit memory, you in the state of safety shared with another, a lot of your own organic work should surface. And I'm sure that's what you're experiencing in the group setting. The thing that I think you're speaking to is that when we have real safety, we tend to be vulnerable. And I
yeah,
think vulnerability is really hard. But if you're in a group setting and one person can be courageous and start to get vulnerable, it usually is a catalyst. But it's like that push, you know what I mean? It's like that ick, oh, I don't want to be vulnerable, right? But I think it's being so brave to walk through that enough
mm,
that is literally explain the science behind how your neural nets are open, how memory is stored, and how that sense of vulnerability and that container of safety is how we become conscious and heal these wounds and truly live a freer life.
mm, mm. I am like just itching to get a copy of your books. Do you have these on Audible? Do you have
Yes, yes, yes,
the
yes.
All
Uh,
right, I am literally going to download. What's your first book?
Anxiously attached you can
I'm
get right now, and then safe is like a deeper dive, a bigger deeper dive, and so I'm hoping that because I have so many people who love the first book, and I'm hoping the ones that love the first book and want to dive deeper will all come out and get the second book because I just went so deep in it.
I'm sure folks will. What prompted you to write this? You already have this bestseller, it's doing well, your practice is doing well. What made you say, "Okay, it's time to go a level deeper and write safe?"
You know, I was doing a lot of my work when I wrote the first book, but I can humbly say that I had a lot more to do.
Mm,
And I continued to study interpersonal neurobiology and people were coming to me and they were asking me about avoidant and they were asking me about more about wounds and they were so I did the most profound deepest work about a year or two before anxiously attached up until about a year ago, so like 4 years of real somatic deep healing. And
mm,
I continued to study attachment on a very deep level and I had an amazing mentor and I just needed people to understand more. I mean, I was understanding more. I can humbly say that I didn't even realize how much more within myself I had to heal. And then, you know, as I study, it's like I bring the reader the science because the science is kind of what kept me grounded and not feeling like I
mm,
was crazy. So I was just like, God, people are like me. I know people are going through this. I know what helps people. I see transformation. I've transformed so much in my life. I thought maybe I was a little more healed with the first book, but I had a little you know, life has an interesting way of waking you up and I guess I had to walk through all of it. And I share very openly about
mm,
my grief and my abandonment wound and my own healing because as much as I'm a professional and I geek out on the science, like I'm a human being walking this
Yeah.
journey with you. Even as the author, I am like, I am with you. I'm
Mm,
not better than you. I am not different than you. I am here to be a companion for you and a human with you. And I have suffered my
mm,
own great deal.
that's beautiful. That is so beautiful. I am definitely going to grab this for folks that are two questions. I have so many more, but I'm like, I can't hold you all day, but I would love to. What for folks that are working in this space, therapists, coaches that are doing this deep work, would you say that your book is something that they could use almost like a curriculum to help walk folks through?
Yeah, I mean, everyone's already using anxiously attached. And so my mentor, Bonnie Badenoch, is like, she wrote Heart of Trauma, and she helped me with this book. And this book is specifically for people to bring to an anchor. And I
Mm,
talk about what an anchor is. It's, listen, if you're wounded in relationship, you need to heal in relationship. That is the science.
mhm,
And this book is it is therapy in a
mhm,
book. And people
mhm,
are like, "Oh my god, I got so much therapy and anxiously attached." I'm like, Wait for it. Wait for it because brace yourself." But I really want people to have a companion in this book, and I really want them to bring it to therapists. And
mm,
therapists have really welcomed my first book, and I think they will really welcome the second book. And both my books, they come with these somatic practices separately, so these meditations that they can go in. And I really do, I not everyone can afford a therapist, but I talk about finding safe people and what that
mm,
really means, and bringing the work to safe people, and being witnessed. As if you understand the science, being witnessed in your original wound actually moves the wound from the body and
mm.
integrates, and we want integration here. So I talk about all of that. And yeah, I really want this book to be used by clinicians for sure.
Mm. You are my people. Let me just say that. Like, I love this. I was in a coaching session early this morning. I had a 6 a.m. coaching because my client is on the East Coast, and I'm a mental health professional by trade, but coach very similar to you. Coaching just opens the door. Some people are
Hmm.
a little bit more afraid of therapy, so coaching really opens the door. But I kept talking to her about integration, and sometimes for believers, there is and I don't know what your faith is, but sometimes for believers, there is this fear when we use this language or when we talk about somatic practices and when we talk about breath work and all of these things that which I believe are like God-given. Like these are God-given techniques that we need to really heal. Like God used these. But integration in particular, she was stuck on that, and so I had to really break it down to her. How would you break that term down on how like because what I was trying to show her is it's her younger self that's showing up. It's not her. It's the
Yeah.
7-year-old that was abused or so how do we talk about integration to believers if you feel comfortable with that? And then um what are some practice to help us integrate? I'm going to front load you with a couple of questions. And then the last question is, does the healing ever stop?
Ooh, they're such good questions. I mean, so the healing never stops, but the walking through the fire, I believe, ends, at least
Mhm.
for periods. So we store trauma in our body. So think a body keeps the score,
Yep.
and we have, and I talk about it in the book, specifically in Safe, but we have fascia, heart, gut, memory. And this
Mhm.
memory, we call it in neuroscience the embodied brain. So our skull brain is connected to this highway of memory and all of that kind of stuff. Our younger self and our memories are stored in these areas. So when we have a younger part show up, it shows up as sensation too. So when
Mhm.
your gut falls to the floor or your heart is racing, we know you're 6 year old. We might be able to even be like, when did this sensation start? How often did you feel this? Let's go to the core. And so I wouldn't say this is integration. I would start to say this is starts to become dual awareness when we
Ah,
can be in the present moment and we can have an experience and also know that a younger part of us is waking up and is scared in that moment, and we can start to dialogue with that part of us
mhm,
differently. We can bring that part that's scared or alone or humiliated to someone who can help hold the experience. And that's when we start to shift what happens in the body when we're
mhm.
witnessed. And we want a therapist or a coach or a person to say, when did this happen to you at first? And yes, this really did happen to you.
Yeah.
So let's slow down and like let's really be with that. And that might take considerable meeting and holding, which
Mm,
is, I'm going to be honest, it's not a fun process, but it's
mm-mm.
a necessary process to build a window of tolerance, to build a container for these parts. And what happens is things in our body start to float up. So we shift into our body, we start to listen to our body. And in SAFE, I talk about building interoception. So we
Mm,
start to build the skills to kind of listen to the body. We shift more into our right hemisphere out of our left, hopefully. We connect with another human into our right hemisphere. We're moving sensation, we're tuning to sensation. And eventually, as you do this enough, it gets integrated into the left hemisphere.
mm.
So we can make up our the story, the charge, the whole thing does change, and it gets kind of, I don't like to say cataloged, but there's a sense of it's in the body, it's being held, and then it actually shifts. So there's like a whole process
It's
that
no
happens.
longer, like, leading you. It's not the leading story anymore. It's just a part of the memories.
Yes, and like my little me, I talk about little me, like she's got a whisper. She's not like,
Mm,
she's not taking over anymore. And if she did, that would be okay. I would pay attention to her. Like
mhm,
I wouldn't shame myself if that was the case. There were many years where she was front and center because she's been through a lot. And
mhm,
that's the way you need to look at, what you've been through. You need to honor it. You need to listen to it. You need to give yourself the space to be with it. You need to acknowledge that some things really did happen to you.
mhm.
And you need other people to validate and witness it for you. And it does move it. You don't stay in like a victim mentality, but you start to build compassion for your own experiences and your own reaction to things, right? You start judging yourself. You stop judging yourself so much.
That's good. I say my little me, she's in a football stadium and she just watches me. She's like in the stands and she watches me as every now and then she shows up and I like you just gave me permission to allow her to speak because sometimes I'm like, no, she needs to be silent. I've healed that version of myself. But if she is coming forward, it's because there's something that's triggering me. There's something that's coming up and I got to allow her to speak.
Yeah, we want to welcome that all the time. All is
Mhm.
welcomed here. Every part, every humiliated part, every scared part. And I think once we start to be with those parts, because remember, the attachment wound is that we didn't get that at the time of the wound. So we
Mhm.
need to actually receive what we didn't get at the original wound. So if we were abandoned, we need to be held safely. If we were
Mm.
humiliated, we need to be accepted, right? Like, so we need to receive the missing link. That's how we kind of reparent and re-witness and disconfirm the experience. And
Mm,
again, this is not woo-woo. Like if you read my book, you'll be like, oh my God, here is the science to like really validate all this inner work.
that's
And
good.
you ask like, I had a client say to me once, like, you seem like you're all healed. I am not. And I am humbly telling you, I am
Mm,
not. And you are never all healed.
mm-mm.
But I do feel like I walked through the fire in terms of what I might have been avoiding in my life. I really hope that I've walked through a lot of it, but the healing always continues and like shows up randomly, but it's like manageable at a point. Like when you start to
Yeah,
do the work, it feels like you're hanging on for dear life and it can be really hard and a lot of things can just show up, and then I think once you get more stability and you get further along, it's not that you're healed, it's just that you have a bigger container, you have a bigger tolerance, you have a bigger bandwidth. We call it a window of tolerance. And like it's not that I don't get dysregulated. I don't things don't impact me quite as much as they used to. And I think some of the work, and I'm going to say this because it came to me today, like some of the work is finding safe people and having really nurturing relationships. and protecting that. Like,
Mhm.
like if I stepped into a couple pretty toxic relationships right now, I might regress. I might, we have to be conscious of who we're sharing our time with, and we need safe people around, and we need that container because we're so vulnerable without that safety of real safe others.
Amen to all of that. I say with my healing, I leave the door open, right? So I don't, sometimes I think when we've done a considerable amount of work, we feel like, okay, that door is shut. And I always say, I'm leaving the door open. So
I would like a little break. Like sometimes I was like, just a little break. Sometimes you just need a little breather, Like don't throw me any hard lessons for a little while. I think I was humbled enough, but yeah, I hear you, and you're right.
I
It's
told a
like,
client that earlier today too. I said, and you don't need any more testimonies. Like, you don't need any more, like, I've risen from the fire. Like, because sometimes I think again, as we spoke to earlier, we put ourselves in those situations because it's familiar. It's familiar. So,
and
goodness,
moving
goodness.
away from the familiar is really freaking hard. I talk about that.
Mhm,
Moving
mhm.
away from that allure, if you're listening, it is not easy for anyone. That pull, depending on how much healing you've done, it can be very potent.
Mhm. And if you don't have a client or coach like Jessica or I, that every now and then you want to fire them because they're making you do the hard work, they're not the right one for you.
Yeah, no, even my own personal therapist, like sometimes, like really pushed me, and that's the
Mm.
point. It's not just, it's to grow.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Jessica, I could literally talk to you all day. I'm getting full body chills because so I know that I'm going to have to go lay down on the floor and just say, okay, what else? What else is coming up just from this conversation? And I love that. I love deep conversations that cause me to reflect, cause me to see what areas I still need to reparent and reconnect with myself. How can the TWT family get in contact with you, grab these books, and learn more about the beautiful work that you're doing on this earth?
Well, for those of you that are listening, and I'm giving you a special link that gives you a blueprint to be on the labels. So you will be able to download immediately all the attachment styles, the wheel of attachment, which is unique to this book, and really understand attachment as a separate document. Also, there's a free video for your audience. Uh, with me and my mentor, and she studied this stuff, and we talk about what inner security feels like and what the journey is like for some people, and we kind of dive in. All of that is for free. It's going to be linked, I think, in your show notes when you order the book Safe. And if you want to order my other book, great, but I'm here to promote Safe, and Safe is such a powerful book, so I wanted to give people those freebies to encourage them to start to learn about their attachment style, do this deeper work, and be on this journey with us.
Awesome. Awesome. Yes, all of Jessica's information will be in the show notes. TWT family, we are not just going to be consumers of information, but we are going to be people that actively engage in our healing. This weekend, I spoke at a conference, and one of the sayings that came to me is healing is a contact sport, and we have to get in the game. So I just want to encourage you, go run to that link in the show notes. Get the information, order the book. Let's run her sales up. And don't only just order one for you, order one for your friends, your family. This would be a great Christmas gift as Christmas is just around the corner. This will be something that you can give to your daughters, your sisters, your nieces, your brothers, your uncles. Like, this is information that we all need. And don't just think of it as people that may have had these big T traumas. We have no idea what people are carrying, and giving them something like this can really unlock their healing. Jessica, thank you so much for being on the show today. Go for it.
And I want to say one thing: if you're listening and you buy the book, I want to hear from you. You can find me on Instagram, Jessica Baum, LMHC. Just reach out. Let me know how it's going for you. Like, I'm interested in every single one of you guys who are going to be courageous enough to pick up the book and start this process.
Yes, awesome. Her Instagram will also be in the show notes. So make sure you go over there and follow her, and you just stay connected once you order that book. TWT family, until next week, continue to stay on this journey of healing because it is well worth it. Until next week, bye-bye.